There is a window, not a permanent opening, not an unlimited opportunity, but a specific heaven-appointed window of time that is open over your life right now. Windows do not stay open forever. Seasons shift, moments pass, and the ones who recognize the window while it is open are the ones whose stories become testimonies that shake generations. You are being warned today, not to frighten you, but to awaken you, because what is available to you in this window is greater than anything you have dared to ask for. Beloved and chosen one, I need you to hear me before another minute passes. The danger you have been sensing is not in your imagination, and the rescue that has been drawing closer is not something you stumbled upon by accident. Heaven paused everything around you at this exact moment to deliver a warning and a promise in the same breath, because there are people God does not warn. People He simply allows to sleep through their window, but you are not one of them. The fact that this message reached you today, in this exact hour of your life, is the warning and the invitation arriving together. Do not let it pass you by. You have been feeling it, have you not? That low, persistent pressure, as though something is pressing in from every direction at once. You wake in the deep of the night, around 3 or 4 in the morning, heart already moving fast before your mind has caught up, and you lie there in the dark, wondering whether you are the only person alive who feels this particular kind of exhaustion. Not the exhaustion of someone who has done too much, but the exhaustion of someone who has been holding a very heavy thing for a very long time, waiting for permission to put it down. And no one around you seems to understand the weight of it, because they cannot feel what you feel. They cannot see what you see. There are signs on your life that mark you as chosen, and you have carried these signs quietly because the world does not have language for them. Your dreams have grown sharper lately, more urgent, full of images that stay with you long after you have opened your eyes, as though someone is trying to hand you information through the only door that stays open while your defenses are down. You feel the emotions of people around you before they speak, absorbing their grief, their fear, their hope, as though your spirit has no walls between itself and the world. And you have wondered more than once whether that is a gift or a curse. There is a frustration living in you that has no clean explanation, a holy restlessness that tells you constantly that you were not made for this limited space, that there is something larger waiting on the other side of whatever is holding you here. And more than once you have felt a sadness you could not explain, a grief for a life you have not yet lived, but can almost touch, a mourning for the version of yourself that was meant to be walking in fullness by now. These are not signs of a broken person. These are the marks of a chosen one standing at the edge of a window that heaven has opened specifically for them. You are an earth angel placed in this exact generation on purpose, carrying a frequency of sensitivity and spiritual awareness that most people around you will never access, because they were not built for what you were built for. And you are part of a divine plan, so precise and so carefully designed that even the years that felt like wasted time were woven into the structure of what is coming. Heaven did not forget you in those seasons. Heaven was assembling you. But here is the warning I am compelled to give you today. A window has a frame, and that frame has edges. What is open right now will not remain open indefinitely. The rescue that is moving toward you, the breakthrough that has been building beneath the surface of everything you have endured, the recognition that has been delayed but not denied, all of it is pressing toward you through this specific, appointed window of time. And the danger is not only what has been pursuing your peace from the outside. The danger is the possibility of sleeping through the moment when the window is fully open. of letting the weight of what has already been hard convince you that nothing is actually shifting, of choosing exhaustion over recognition because the risk of hoping feels greater than the familiarity of waiting. You have been wronged. You have been overlooked. You have carried your calling in a world that rewarded smaller things and could not see what you were holding. And those years have cost you something real, something that deserves to be named and honored before we go any further. But tonight, the cost of the past is not greater than the value of what this window is offering you. And I am standing here, speaking directly into your life to make sure you do not miss it. The season of waiting has not paused, it ended. Before I take you deeper into what it truly means, I want to pause for just a moment and share something with you, because part of recognizing a heaven-appointed window is understanding what has been quietly closing your eyes to it. There is a measurable frequency inside the human brain called gamma, and researchers who study it have found that it is most active in visionaries, in creative pioneers, and in people who carry an unusual capacity for perceiving what others cannot see. Chosen ones are very often born with stronger gamma activity than the average person, but here is what almost no one explains. Long seasons of pressure, grief, isolation, and the relentless weight of waiting slowly suppress that frequency, dimming the very faculty that was meant to help you recognize the windows heaven opens over your life. A neuroscientist named Dr. James Rivers, who spent more than 30 years studying brain frequency and cognitive function, affiliated with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, researched this exact pattern. And the outcome of that work became a simple audio tool called the Genius Wave, something you can use for only 7 minutes a day. If you feel something stir in you when I describe it, the link is already waiting for you in the pinned comment below. We will return to this in much greater detail very soon. But I did not want to take you through everything that is about to unfold tonight without first placing that anchor in your hand, because a chosen one standing at an open window deserves to see clearly. Now let me return to where we are, because the danger pressing against your life is real, and the rescue moving toward you is equally real. And you deserve to understand both without softening. You have spent years in a season that felt more like confinement than preparation. And that confinement has taught you things about yourself that you could not have learned in comfort. The very sensitivity that made you feel too much, see too much, carry too much, has been your training ground. The isolation that felt like punishment has been the classroom where you were being equipped for a room that does not yet know your name, but is already being arranged for your arrival. The danger of this season is that the weight of it can convince you the window will never open. But the truth of this night is that it already has. And what stands between you and walking through it is only your willingness to recognize it. You are not someone who wanders through life at random. You are someone heaven has tracked from the beginning, someone whose address was known before you were born, someone whose name was spoken into the plans of this generation, long before you understood what you were carrying. And the rescue coming toward you is not a reward for perfect faith or flawless endurance. It is the fulfillment of a word that was spoken over you before you had the language to receive it. The heaviness you feel tonight is the weight of old things releasing their grip, and the stirring in your spirit is the frequency of your true calling coming back online after a long and difficult winter. Before we go further, I want to give you a simple practice to anchor your spirit in this moment. A way to meet the window that is opened over you with steadiness and intention. Step 1. Bring to mind one thing you are grateful for that did not happen. A danger you were quietly protected from, a door that closed before you could walk through it into harm, a loss that would have been far greater than you knew. Let the reality of that hidden protection settle into your body and soften the fear that has been telling you that you are alone in this. Step 2. Speak these words to yourself quietly and with full intention. I am not late. I am not overlooked. I am positioned at an open window, and I choose to step through it. Let those words replace the ones that have been whispering that you missed your moment. Step 3. Give yourself 7 minutes of complete stillness. No striving, no performing, no demanding answers. Simply breathe and allow your spirit to return to the frequency it carries, the frequency of the chosen, the one that has been waiting to come fully alive in this exact season. Something is moving in you right now, a recognition that goes deeper than the mind. And I want you to know that somewhere out there, another chosen one is sitting in the same kind of dark, in desperate need of the exact words you just received. If you would press like, you help this message travel into the silence where they are waiting. If you would leave even one word in the comments, you join a community of chosen ones who are refusing to let each other disappear into the noise. If you would share this with someone who has been quietly carrying too much, you may be the very rescue they prayed for this week. And if you subscribe, the next message will find you without you having to search for it. There is a donation link in the pinned comment as well. And if you feel moved to pass the light forward to someone who is still finding their way, that is simply your way of keeping this flame alive for a soul you will never meet. Nothing here is owed. Nothing here is required. Let the message hold you now. You have just returned to stillness, and in that stillness, something was restored to you that the long season had been quietly dimming. Now I want to give you the full picture of what I only briefly named a few moments ago, because understanding what has been suppressing your frequency is the first real step towards stepping through the window that heaven has opened over your life. You have been living in a dimmed room without knowing the lights were ever supposed to be brighter. Not because something was wrong with you, not because you lacked faith or discipline, or the willingness to press through, but because something measurable, something that science can now name and locate inside the human brain, has been quietly turned down by the weight of every season you have survived. And what I am about to tell you is the explanation you did not know you were waiting for. Chosen ones carry a specific frequency. This is not poetic language, and it is not spiritual metaphor. Researchers who study the human brain have identified measurable differences in the electrical activity of people who demonstrate unusual creativity, heightened intuition, rapid learning, and what some describe as a capacity to perceive what others simply cannot access. That frequency has a name in the scientific community, and it is called gamma. It sits in the higher range of brainwave activity, and when it is running at the level it was designed to run, it produces states of clarity, creative flow, deep knowing, and what ordinary language can only describe as being fully alive to what is happening around you and within you. Gamma is the frequency of the visionary. It is the frequency of the one who sees the window before anyone else in the room notices it is open. And you were born with more of it than most. But here was what Dr. James Rivers discovered over the course of more than 30 years of dedicated research. Work that grew out of his affiliation with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and extended into studies that examined the brain patterns of thousands of individuals across many seasons of life. The gamma frequency, as powerful as it is in its natural state, is extraordinarily sensitive to prolonged stress. When a person spends years in survival mode, carrying grief without resolution, enduring isolation without community, pressing forward through waiting season after waiting season, with no visible sign that anything is shifting. The brain begins to protect itself by dimming the very frequencies that require the most energy to sustain. Gamma is one of the first to go quiet, and beneath it, in the range that researchers call theta, sitting between 4 and 8 cycles per second, lies the frequency most associated with creativity, with deep intuition, with the kind of learning that bypasses the logical mind and goes straight into the knowing. Theta is the frequency children live in naturally. It is the frequency of the dreamer, the one whose mind moves between worlds without effort, whose imagination is not a luxury but a way of processing reality. And it too gets suppressed under the accumulated weight of too many hard seasons. Think about what that means for a moment. The room you have been living in was not always this dim. There was a version of you that moved through the world with a brightness that surprised even yourself, a sharpness of mind, a flow of ideas, a sense of being connected to something larger that made decisions feel clear and creativity feel effortless. And then, gradually, without a single dramatic moment you could point to, the light began to lower. Not because you stopped believing, not because your calling was revoked, but because your brain, doing exactly what it was designed to do under sustained pressure, began conserving energy by quieting the frequencies that cost the most to maintain. The dimming was not a punishment. It was a survival response. But surviving and thriving are not the same room, and what Dr. Rivers gave his life's work to was finding the way to turn the lights back on. What his research confirmed, across thousands of cases and more than 3 decades of study, is that this suppression is not permanent. The brain is not broken when it dims these frequencies. It is simply protecting itself with the only tool it has available. And if you give it the right signal, a carefully structured acoustic signal delivered at the precise frequency the brain is looking for, it will begin to re-entrain. That is the word researchers use, entrainment. The brain has a natural tendency to synchronize with rhythmic patterns in its environment. And when those patterns are constructed correctly, using techniques such as binaural beats and isochronic tones calibrated to specific target frequencies, the brain follows. It does not require effort from you. It does not require skill or concentration or any particular training. It simply requires that you show up for 7 minutes and let the signal do what it was designed to do. 7 minutes. The same 7 minutes you practiced in the stillness not long ago. That was not an accident. That length of time is not arbitrary. Dr. Rivers found that 7 minutes is the threshold at which the brain moves from its defended, survival-oriented state into the receptive state, where entrainment can take root without producing fatigue or resistance. Shorter than 7 minutes, and the signal does not have time to complete the shift. Longer than 7 minutes in the early stages, and the brain begins to push back. 7 minutes is the precise, studied, confirmed window within the window. The amount of time it takes to bring a dimmed frequency back online and remind the chosen one's brain of the signal it was built to carry. The tool Dr. Rivers built around this research is called the Genius Wave. It is a 7-minute audio track available as a digital download, constructed on decades of peer-reviewed understanding of how the human brain responds to acoustic entrainment. You do not need to meditate. You do not need to concentrate or visualize or perform any technique. You simply listen, and your brain does the rest, because your brain already knows this frequency. It is not learning something foreign. It is returning to something it always carried, something the long season quietly covered over without your permission. I want to tell you about a woman named Sandra, who came to the Genius Wave in the middle of what she described as the longest silence of her life. She had been waiting for a career shift for over 3 years, applying, preparing, believing, and watching schools close quietly one after another. She described her mind as foggy, as though she was thinking through water, and her creativity, which had always been the thing she trusted most about herself, had gone somewhere she could not reach. She began using the Genius Wave every morning for 7 minutes before anything else touched her day. By the 3rd week, she told Dr. Rivers's team that ideas were arriving again, not forced ideas, but the kind that come from somewhere deeper than effort. By the 2nd month, she had been offered a position she had not even applied for, reached out to directly by someone who had seen her work from years prior and had been waiting for the right moment to connect. She said the most significant change was not the opportunity itself. It was that when the opportunity arrived, her mind was clear enough to recognize it and steady enough to say yes without fear. The lights had come back on, and she could finally see the room she had been standing in all along. I know that some of you are sitting with a quiet hesitation right now, and I want to name it before you carry it any further. $39 is not nothing. In a season where you have already given so much and seen so little return, spending anything on yourself can feel like a risk you cannot afford. That hesitation is completely valid, and I am not going to press you past it with urgency. What I will say is this: the 90-day money-back guarantee that comes with the Genius Wave is not a small print footnote. It is a full, unconditional promise that if you use this tool and feel nothing, receive nothing, and find that it has added nothing to your life, you receive every dollar returned to you without argument or condition. The risk is structured entirely in your favor. The regular price of the Genius Wave is $49, but through the link in the pinned comment below, you can access it today for $39. That price and that link are the only place I would ever direct you, because there is something important I need to say before you go searching anywhere else. There are places online where versions of this audio have appeared that are not the original tool. They do not carry the precise calibration that Dr. Rivers and his team built into the Genius Wave, and using an imprecise entrainment signal is not a neutral experience. The specificity of the frequency matters. The construction of the signal matters. Please access the Genius Wave only through the single link pinned in the comments below. That is the only verified original source, and it is the only version I would stake my name on pointing you toward. I also want to be honest with you about the window at this price. $39 is not the permanent price, and the access currently available through that link is not guaranteed to remain open indefinitely. Dr. Rivers's team adjusts availability as demand shifts, and the window at this price, much like the heaven-appointed window open over your life right now, has edges and a frame. I am not telling you this to manufacture urgency. I am telling you this because you deserve complete information, and because a chosen one standing at an open window deserves to know how long it has been open and how to walk through it with intention rather than hesitation. If the Genius Wave met something in you when I described it, if there was a recognition in your body when I named the dimming of the frequency, when I described the foggy thinking and the creativity that went somewhere out of reach, when I spoke of the room that used to be brighter, then that recognition is not accidental. It is your frequency responding to the name of what it has been waiting for. The link is in the pinned comment. It is not going anywhere right now, and what it points to is not something foreign being added to your life. It is the light in the room being restored to the level it was always supposed to reach. And now, having given you that full picture, let me carry you forward. Because there are things living inside of you in this season that no one has yet had the courage to name out loud for you. Feelings you have been quietly managing that deserve to be called by their true names. And that is exactly where we are going next. There are feelings living inside you right now that you have never heard named out loud by another person, and the silence around them has made you wonder, in your most honest moments, whether you were simply too much, too sensitive, too broken to function the way everyone else around you seems to function. I want to end that silence right now. What you have been carrying is not a personal failing. It is a pattern that every chosen one moves through before the window of their breakthrough fully opens. And once you hear it described, you will not feel alone in it for a single moment longer. The first sign is this: a sudden wave of sadness washes over you about the past, not the distant past, but specific moments, specific seasons, specific versions of yourself that you grieve without fully understanding why. You find yourself replaying choices you made years ago, not obsessively, but with a quiet ache, as though something in you is trying to locate the exact place where the story began. To feel wrong, that sadness is not weakness. It is your spirit doing the honest work of inventory before a major transition, because you cannot carry what is coming while your hands are still full of what was. The second sign is that familiar places and familiar people have begun to feel heavy and strange in a way you cannot explain without sounding ungrateful. The friendships that used to feel easy now require a performance you are no longer willing to give. The environments that once felt like home now feel like borrowed spaces you have outgrown, without anyone giving you permission to leave. You sit in rooms you have sat in 100 times before and feel like a visitor, like someone whose forwarding address has already changed, even though your body has not moved yet. That strangeness is not ingratitude, and it is not disloyalty. It is the sensation of a person whose frequency has shifted past the frequency of the spaces that once held them, and it is one of the clearest signs that you are being repositioned for something that requires a different kind of room. The third sign is a recurring dream. Not always the same dream, but always the same feeling inside it. A door that is not yet open. A threshold you can see clearly but cannot cross. A room on the other side that you know belongs to you, but that something is still holding just out of reach. You wake from these dreams with a longing that sits in your chest for the rest of the day. A sense that you were almost there, that the answer was just on the other side of the door, that if you could only find the right key, you would finally understand what all of this has been for. That dream is not a taunt. It is a map. Heaven does not show you a door that will never open. It shows you the door so that when it opens, you will recognize it immediately and not walk past it in your exhaustion. The fourth sign is that the same message keeps finding you through completely different channels. A phrase in a conversation with a stranger, a word in a book you picked up without intention, a lyric in a song playing in the background of an ordinary afternoon. A message like this one, arriving at an hour when you had almost convinced yourself that nothing was moving. The repetition is not coincidence. When heaven wants to make sure a chosen one does not miss a signal, it sends that signal through multiple frequencies at the same time, because it knows how loud the noise of the waiting season can be. And it refuses to let the message get lost in it. Now I want to name the specific pains that have come with this season, because acknowledging what it has actually cost you is not self-pity. It is honesty. And honesty is the foundation of everything that is about to be built in your life. You have not been sleeping the way you were designed to sleep. The nights have been too long and too full of thoughts that circle without resolution, full of a vigilance that your body cannot turn off even. when your mind is begging for rest. That insomnia is your nervous system carrying a load it was never meant to carry alone. And the fact that you are still functioning, still showing up, still pressing forward through days that begin before the rest has come, is a testament to a strength in you that you have stopped giving yourself credit for. You have been lonely in a way that has nothing to do with how many people surround you. You can be in a full room and feel the particular loneliness of the chosen one, the one who sees what no one else is seeing, who feels what no one else is acknowledging, who is holding a frequency that the people around them simply do not share. That loneliness is not a sign that you are meant to be alone. It is a sign that the community built for who you are becoming has not yet assembled around you, and that is a timing issue, not a worthiness issue. You have felt wronged, not in a bitter way, not in a way that has curdled into hatred, but in the quiet, exhausting way of someone who has done the right thing consistently and watched it go unrecognized, who has given generously and been taken for granted, who has trusted people who were not trustworthy and paid the price of that trust in ways that still ache when they are pressed. And you have felt misunderstood, deeply and repeatedly misunderstood, in ways that eventually taught you to keep your truest thoughts close, to share only the surface, to protect the deeper parts of yourself from people who had demonstrated they did not have the capacity to hold them carefully. I want to reframe something for you now, and I need you to stay with me through this reframe because it is one of the most important things I will say in this entire message. There is a difference between being overlooked and being positioned, and the difference matters enormously for how you carry the rest of this season. Being overlooked means you were seen and deemed unworthy of recognition. Being positioned means you were deliberately placed in a specific location by a hand that knows exactly what it is building. A hand that understands that the right people cannot find you until the right moment, and that premature visibility in the wrong season would have exposed you to things you were not yet equipped to handle. You were not overlooked. You were positioned. You were not abandoned in the waiting. You were protected inside it. The silence around your name was not the silence of a world that did not care. It was the silence of a plan being assembled with a precision that does not rush and does not make mistakes. Something is moving in this community right now. Chosen ones all across the world, arriving at this same recognition at the same time, waking up to the truth of what their season has actually been. And you are not experiencing this alone. If this message has named something real in you today, I want to gently invite you to press like, so that the next chosen one, sitting in their own silent room, can find these words before another night passes. Leave something in the comments, even a single word, as a way of marking that you showed up for yourself today, and that you refuse to stay unnamed. If someone in your life has been struggling to find stillness in a noisy season, share this with them, because your willingness to pass it on may be the most significant thing you do for them this week. Choose to subscribe not as a platform action, but as a decision to remain part of a community of chosen ones who are waking up together. And if you feel moved, there is a link in the pinned comment where you can leave a blessing for the next person finding their way to this recognition, offering what you can, so that this light reaches further than either of us could carry it alone. If you recognize yourself in what I have described today, if the 4 signs landed in you with the weight of something true, if the naming of the pain felt less like information and more like finally being seen, then I want you to type the word ready in the comments right now. Just that one word. Because you are not someone who is still waiting to become chosen. You are someone who is ready to walk through the door, that has already been opened. What I have named in this part of the message is the reality of where you have been. But where you have been is not where you are staying. And the next thing I need to show you is what those years of waiting have actually been doing beneath the surface, because the price you paid in this season was real, and it deserves more than a quick reframe. It deserves to be honored fully before we talk about what comes next. What those years cost you is not a small thing, and I am not going to rush past it as though naming it briefly is the same as honoring it fully. You deserve more than a quick acknowledgement before the pivot to something hopeful. You deserve to have someone sit with you in the reality of what the waiting season actually took, without immediately softening it with a promise, without rushing you toward the silver lining before you have had the chance to grieve what the clouds covered over. Let me be plain with you. The waiting took relationships that could have been built. There were people who passed through your life during these years who might have become something lasting, something nourishing, something that would have held you through the harder nights. But the season you were in did not have the spare energy required to build those bridges. And so they remained unbuilt, and those people moved on. And you watched them go with a kind of quiet grief that you never quite gave yourself permission to fully feel. The connections that might have rooted you in community, the friendships that might have grown into something that carried you, the partnership that might have made the long nights feel less silent. These were not luxuries you chose to go without. They were casualties of a season that demanded everything you had just to keep you standing. The waiting took a career that could have gone further by now. You have the capacity. You have always had the capacity, and there have been moments when you could feel the gap between what you were doing and what you were built to do, like a physical ache. You watched people with less vision, less dedication, less of the fire that burns in you move into rooms you had been preparing for, and you had to find a way to keep believing that your time was coming without letting the bitterness of that observation hollow you out. That discipline, the discipline of staying faithful to something you could not yet see while watching others receive what looked like what you were promised, is one of the most costly and least acknowledged forms of endurance that exists. The waiting took your freedom to speak your dreams out loud. Somewhere along the way you learned to keep the larger vision close to your chest, not because you stopped believing in it, but because the gap between where you were and where you felt called to be had become so wide that saying it out loud invited a particular kind of pain. The pain of other people's doubt. The pain of your own voice saying something true that you could not yet prove. And so the dream went quiet in public, even as it continued to burn in private. And that quieting cost you something in your own relationship with yourself, a small but real erosion of the confidence that comes from being witnessed in your truest hopes. And the waiting took faith in yourself, not faith in God, not the deep, stubborn, unlikely faith that kept you in this message until this moment, but the simpler, more personal faith that you are someone whose instincts can be trusted, whose judgment is sound, whose sense of direction is reliable. When season after season passes without visible confirmation, when the inner knowing you have followed leads through territory that looks like loss from the outside, it becomes harder to trust the voice inside you, and you begin to second-guess the very guidance that was meant to lead you through. That erosion of self-trust is perhaps the most invisible cost of the long waiting season, and it is also the one that most directly affects your ability to step through the window that is now opened over your life. I want to sit with all of that for a moment before I say anything else. I want you to let the reality of what this season has cost you be real and named and acknowledged without any rush toward resolution. You lost time that felt irreplaceable. You lost connections that might have changed your life. You lost a version of yourself that moved with an ease and a confidence that feels like a distant memory now, and you are allowed to grieve that. Grief is not the opposite of faith. It is one of the most honest forms of it, because it tells the truth about what mattered. Now let me take you to someone whose story the ancient texts preserved, not because it ended beautifully, although it did, but because the difficult part of it is true in a way that chosen ones in every generation have needed to hear. Joseph, Joseph who stood second in command over an entire nation, not the Joseph whose brothers bowed before him in the fulfillment of a dream he had carried since childhood, but the Joseph who sat in a pit while his brothers ate bread calmly nearby. The Joseph who was sold by the people who should have protected him, who was handed over to strangers, who was carried into a foreign land with nothing but the memory of a dream that now seemed more like a cruel joke than a divine promise. The Joseph who served faithfully in Potiphar's house and was falsely accused and imprisoned for it. The Joseph who interpreted the cupbearer's dream correctly and was forgotten in a cell for 2 more years after the man walked free. That Joseph, the one in the middle of the story, not at the end of it. The one for whom every door that opened led to another form of confinement. The one who had every human reason to conclude that the dream was a lie and that God had either forgotten or never intended to fulfill what had been shown to him in the first place. That is the Joseph I want you to sit beside right now, because that Joseph is where you have been living, and the weight of his middle chapters is the weight you have been carrying, and it is real, and it is heavy, and it is not nothing. You are not at the end of the story yet, but neither are you in the pit any longer. Something has shifted in the structure of your season. And in the next part of this message, I want to give you the language for what that shift actually means, because there is an ancient understanding of time that reframes everything you have just named. And once you hear it, the years behind you will never look quite the same again. There is a language older than any you have been given for what you are living through. And I want to hand it to you now, because the words you have been using to describe your season have not been large enough to hold what is actually happening. When the only language available to you is words like delay, and stuck, and too late, and left behind, you will interpret your season through the frame those words create. And that frame will always make the waiting look like punishment. But there is an ancient understanding of time that reframes everything, and once it settles into you, the years behind you will never look quite the same again. The first concept I want to give you is one that comes from the ancient Greek language, and it draws a distinction that modern life has almost entirely erased. In that language, there were 2 completely separate words for time. The first was chronos. Chronos is the time you measure on a clock, the time that accumulates in days and months and years, the time that your mind has been tracking anxiously as the waiting season extended further than you ever expected it to. Chronos is the time that feels like it is running out, the time that makes you do the math on how old you are and how far you are from where you thought you would be by now, the time that the enemy of your destiny uses as a weapon against your peace. Every morning you wake up and Chronos is already waiting for you, ticking, counting, measuring the distance between where you are and where you feel you should be. But the second word was kairos. And kairos does not mean time in the clock sense at all. Kairos means the right time, the appointed moment, the specific heaven-engineered intersection of readiness and opportunity that cannot be manufactured by human effort and cannot be prevented by human opposition. Kairos is not on the clock. Kairos does not accumulate. It arrives. And when it arrives, everything that Chronos spent years measuring becomes irrelevant. Because Kairos does not reward the person who waited the longest, or worked the hardest, or believed the most perfectly. Kairos finds the person who was being assembled in the right way, in the right season, for the right purpose, and it meets them at the exact threshold where their preparation and their promise converge. What I need you to understand, chosen one, is that you have been measuring your life in Chronos, while heaven has been working in Kairos. You have been counting the days while God has been braiding the rope. You have been measuring the distance while heaven has been closing it in ways invisible to the Chronos eye. The reason the waiting has felt so long is not that heaven forgot about you, or that the promise was revoked, or that you missed your moment through some failure of faith. The reason it has felt long is that you have been using the wrong measurement. Chronos will always make Kairos look late, but Kairos is never late. It is always, without exception, precisely on time, arriving at the exact moment the assembly is complete and the window is fully open. And that window, the one I described at the very beginning of this message, is not a Chronos window. It is a Kairos window. It did not open because enough days finally passed. It opened because something in the assembly of who you are becoming reached completion. Because the preparation that looked like punishment from the outside finally produced the person who is ready to receive what was always intended. You are not standing at this window because you survived long enough. You are standing here because heaven determined that the Kairos moment had arrived, and it dispatched this message to reach you before the hesitation of Chronos could talk you out of recognizing it. The second ancient understanding I want to give you sits alongside the first and deepens it in a way that I believe will reach the part of you that has been most afraid. It comes from the prophetic tradition, from the voice that speaks into the life of someone who is standing at the edge of giving up and says, plainly and without apology, that there is an appointed time, not a possible time, not a probable time, an appointed time, a time that was written before the waiting began, a time that the opposition of every hard season has been powerless to erase, a time that exists in the record of heaven as a fixed point that delay cannot cancel and discouragement cannot move. What God has ordained, delay cannot cancel. I want you to let that land in the place where you have been most afraid it was already too late. The thing you were promised, the thing you have been carrying through every season of cost and grief and quiet endurance. It was not given to you as a suggestion. It was not offered to you as a possibility that would expire if the circumstances did not cooperate quickly enough. It was ordained. It was written. It was appointed. And an appointed time is not subject to the interference of the seasons that surround it. It simply arrives, the way dawn arrives, not because the night agreed to end, but because the appointed hour came. Think about what that means for the specific things this season took from you. The relationships that did not form, the career that did not advance the way it should have, the dreams you stopped saying out loud, the faith in yourself that eroded under the pressure of too many unanswered seasons. None of those losses canceled the appointed time. None of them moved the fixed point. They were the midnight hours, the darkest moments before the threshold, the place where everything visible said it was finished while everything invisible was still in motion. And this is the thing about midnight that the ancient symbolic language understood deeply. Midnight is not the end of the story. Midnight is the threshold. It is the precise boundary between what was and what is coming. It is the moment when the darkness is at its deepest and the new day is at its closest. And the ones who hold on through midnight are always the ones who see the dawn. You have been in the midnight hour, not a midnight of your own making, not a midnight that your choices alone created, but the midnight that every chosen one passes through before the appointed time arrives. The midnight that feels like it has gone on far longer than midnight was ever supposed to last. And I am standing here at the edge of this message to tell you that what you are feeling right now, the stirring, the recognition, the strange and inexplicable sense that something is about to change, that is not wishful thinking. That is the sound of midnight ending. That is the first frequency of dawn reaching you before the light is fully visible. At midnight, when everyone thought it was all over, heaven began to move. And what God has ordained, delay cannot cancel. These are not comforting phrases offered to people who need to feel better about their circumstances. These are the two ancient pillars that hold up everything I have been speaking into your life tonight. And I want you to build the next season of your life on them, rather than on the shifting sand of Chronos' measurement and human expectation. I also want to gently remind you, as I promised I would, that the genius wave, the tool Dr. James Rivers built around the science of restoring what the long seasons have suppressed, is still waiting for you in the pinned comment below. I mention it here, not with pressure but with intention, because there is something deeply fitting about a chosen one who has just received the language of Kairos, also having access to a tool that works in alignment with the brain's own appointed frequency. If this is the Kairos moment for your breakthrough, it is also the Kairos moment for restoring the frequency that the midnight seasons dimmed. The link is there whenever you are ready. There is no rush and no obligation. It is simply available, the way a door is available, standing open for the person who recognizes it. What I have given you in this part of the message is the ancient language for what you have been living. Chronos measured your waiting and called it loss. Kairos was assembling your destiny and calling it preparation. The midnight hour pressed in and said it was finished. The appointed time held firm and said it had not yet begun. And now, standing at the threshold of both the Kairos window and the turning of the midnight hour, I want to show you something specific, something practical, something you can feel in your body as real and imminent rather than distant and hoped for. Because something inside your life I call abroad moving, and in the next part of this message, I am going to name exactly what that is and where you are going to feel it first. Something inside your life is already in motion, and I want you to feel that truth before I name it, because there is the difference between being told that change is coming and actually sensing the ground shift beneath you. You have been standing on what felt like solid stillness for so long that the movement can feel disorienting at first, like the moment a ship that has been anchored for years finally begins to pull away from the dock. The motion is real, the direction is set, and what I want to do right now is give you the specific language for what is moving, because a chosen one who understands what heaven is doing is far better equipped to cooperate with it than one who simply hopes something will eventually change. The first thing that is moving is your clarity, not the forced, performed clarity of someone who has talked themselves into optimism, but the deep, settling clarity that comes when the frequency of the chosen one begins to return to its full strength. You have been thinking through fog for so long that you may have forgotten what it feels like to have a thought arrive clean and whole and trustworthy. But something has already begun to shift in the way your mind is moving, and you may have noticed it in small ways over the past few weeks without having language for it. A solution appearing where there was only confusion before. A sense of knowing that arrived without you having to reason your way to it. A moment of creative flow in the middle of an ordinary afternoon that surprised you with its clarity and its ease. These are not random occurrences. These are the first signs of the frequency returning. The gamma and the theta coming back online after the long suppression of the midnight season, and they are going to increase in both frequency and intensity as this Kairos window continues to open over your life. The second thing that is moving is your positioning. The relational and circumstantial geography of your life is being quietly rearranged in ways that are not yet fully visible, but that you can feel if you pay attention. Certain people are beginning to feel further away, not because of conflict or drama, but because the frequency they carry is simply no longer resonant with the frequency you are returning to. And certain other people, new people, or people who have been in the background of your life without yet stepping into their full significance, are beginning to feel closer, more relevant, more present in a way that is not accidental. Heaven is repositioning the people in your orbit to match the season you are entering, removing what no longer belongs and drawing near what has been assigned to the next chapter. Do not chase what is moving away. Do not be confused by what is drawing closer. Trust the repositioning. The third thing that is moving is your voice. The voice you quieted in the long season, the one that knew things and saw things, and carried a frequency of wisdom that the rooms you were in could not hold. That voice is beginning to press back toward the surface. You will feel it first as an impulse to say something you would normally have swallowed, an instinct to share a perspective you would normally have kept protected, a desire to take up the space you were given, rather than shrinking into the corner of it. Do not suppress that impulse when it comes. The voice that is returning to you is not the tempered voice of someone who has not yet been through the midnight hour. It is the refined, seasoned, midnight-tested voice of a chosen one who has something to say that the next generation of waiting people desperately needs to hear. Now I want to describe what you are feeling in your body as these three things begin to move, because the emotions of this transition are not all comfortable, and I do not want you to misread them as signs that something is going wrong. You may be feeling a simultaneous excitement and terror that seem to contradict each other, but that are actually the natural companions of anyone standing at a genuine threshold. The excitement is the recognition of what is opening. The terror is the accumulated memory of doors that appeared to open and then did not. Both of those responses are completely honest, and neither of them is the enemy of your breakthrough. They are simply the emotional landscape of a chosen one who has paid a real price and is now being asked to trust again at a level that the midnight season made very costly. You may also be feeling an impulse to pull back just as things are beginning to accelerate. A reflex of protection that developed over years of being let down at the moment of what looked like breakthrough. I want to name that reflex not to criticize it, but to make sure you recognize it for what it is when it arrives. It is not discernment. It is the scar tissue of the long season trying to protect you from a pain that is no longer coming. The window is open. The Kairos moment has arrived, and the reflex that served you in the midnight hour does not serve you in the dawn. Here is what I want to counsel you not to do during this period of transition. Do not shrink back into the familiar smallness of the waiting season, just because the movement feels unfamiliar. Do not seek the validation of people who were not present for your midnight hour before you take the steps your spirit is already confirming. Do not wait for perfect conditions, perfect timing in the chronos sense, perfect certainty before you move. Because the Kairos window does not come with perfect conditions. It comes with the right conditions, which is different. And the person who waits for perfect will wait past the open window into another season of Chronos measurement. And do not stop believing in anything. That is the word of confidence I want to leave in you before I move forward. You have carried belief through the midnight hour, through the pit, through the prison of the long seasons, and that belief has not returned void. It has been doing something in the invisible architecture of your life that is only now beginning to show its structure. You can believe in everything that was promised to you, not the naive belief of someone who has not yet encountered resistance, but the seasoned, tested, refined belief of someone who went all the way through the midnight hour and came out the other side still holding the dream. That kind of belief is not common. It is rare and it is powerful, and it is exactly the kind of belief that the Kairos moment responds to. Chosen ones do not only receive what heaven has prepared for them, they carry it and multiply it and pass it forward to the ones who are still in their midnight hours. And every person who finds this message today is part of something larger than a single breakthrough. If what has been spoken into your life today has stirred something real in you, I want to invite you to press like as an act of choosing to be part of what is moving, not just in your own life, but in the lives of the chosen ones who need this message to reach them before their window passes. Drop a word in the comments as a signal to every other chosen one watching that they are not sitting in this alone, that the ground is shifting for more than just you. Share this with someone who is still in the thick of their waiting season and who needs to know that the midnight hour has an end and that the appointed time cannot be canceled. Choose to stay at the table by subscribing, remaining in this community of chosen ones who are waking up together and refusing to let each other stay asleep. And if you feel moved to sow into the ground that grows something for the next person standing at their own threshold, the donation link is in the pinned comment below. Ready to extend what you have received today into a life you will never personally meet, but that your generosity will permanently change. If something in you has recognized the three things moving in your life right now, if the clarity and the repositioning and the returning voice have landed as true rather than hoped for, then I want you to type the word receive in the comments. Just that word. Because receiving is the posture of someone who has stopped fighting for what was never theirs to fight for and has opened their hands to what heaven has been holding in reserve for exactly this moment. You are not someone who can only believe in what they can see. You are someone who walked through the midnight hour with belief intact. And that is the person I want to speak to now. Because what comes next is the moment where I give you a specific name for who you have become through everything this season asked of you. And that name is going to change the way you carry yourself for the rest of your life. Something in you has just shifted, and I want to make sure you feel it before we go any further. The ground that was moving in the last part of this message was not moving randomly. It was moving towards something specific, something that has a name, and the name I am about to give you is not a title you have earned through perfect performance or flawless endurance. It is the name of what you have become through the very process that felt like it was destroying you. It is the identity that was being carved out of you during every midnight hour, every season of repositioning, every moment when the Chronos clock said you were running out of time, while Kairos was assembling the person who would be ready when the appointed moment arrived. You are a pathfinder. Not in the casual sense of someone who simply finds their way through difficulty. Not in the motivational sense of someone who overcomes obstacles and moves on. I am speaking of something far more specific and far more weighty than either of those descriptions can hold. A pathfinder is someone who does not find a path that already exists. A pathfinder is someone whose life, whose endurance, whose willingness to keep moving through territory that had no map and no markers and no guarantee of safe arrival, actually creates the path for everyone who comes after them. The ground you have walked across during this long and difficult season was not ground that had been walked before, not in the exact configuration of your particular calling, your particular pain, your particular combination of gifts and wounds and stubborn, midnight-tested faith. And every step you took across that unmapped territory left an impression in the ground that someone else will one day follow without knowing. Your name, someone who will find their way through because you refused to stop walking when the path disappeared beneath you. Let me say what that means in the most concrete terms I can find. When you think about the years of isolation, the years when you felt most invisible and most misunderstood, what you were actually experiencing was the particular loneliness of the pioneer. Pioneers are always alone in the early stages of the territory they are crossing, not because they are unloved or unworthy of companionship, but because the ground they are crossing has not yet been opened to others. The pathfinder moves. First, the pathfinder absorbs the resistance of the unopened territory so that the ones who follow can move through it with less friction, with more light, with the benefit of a road that someone else paid a very high price to establish. That is what you have been doing, not failing to arrive at a destination that others reached easily, paying the cost of opening a road that did not previously exist. And there is something else that belongs to the identity of the pathfinder that I want you to carry with you for the rest of this message and beyond it. A pathfinder does not only create a way forward through difficulty. A pathfinder carries a frequency of recognition, an ability to read the terrain, to sense what is ahead before it becomes visible, to perceive the signs of safe passage and the signs of danger in a landscape that looks featureless to everyone else. That is the sensitivity you have been carrying your entire life. That is the heightened awareness that felt like a burden during the midnight season, because there was nowhere to direct it, no terrain to read, no path to mark. But the pathfinder's sensitivity was never meant to be turned inward in a confined space. It was designed for open ground. And open ground is exactly what this Kairos window is placing beneath your feet. I want to take you into a guided moment now, a visualization that I am going to lead you through carefully, because sometimes the spirit receives most fully, not through information, but through image. And the image I want to build inside you is one that will stay with you long after this message has ended. Picture yourself standing at a threshold. Not a dramatic threshold, not a grand archway or an ornate gate, but a simple, quiet boundary between two kinds of ground. Behind you is the territory you have crossed to get here. And I want you to take a moment to actually look back at it, not with regret, not with grief, but with the eyes of the pathfinder who is seeing their own road for the first time from the other side of it. Look at how far you have walked. Look at the terrain that had no markers, the places where the path disappeared entirely and you kept moving anyway. The places where you fell and got up and kept moving. The places where the darkness was so complete that you could not see your own hands in front of you, and you walked forward anyway, because something in you refused to stop. Look at all of it, not as evidence of how much you suffered, but as evidence of the road you built. Because behind you, stretching back through everything you have endured, is a path that did not exist before you walked it, and it is real, and it is yours, and it will carry the weight of everyone who follows you through it. Now turn back to the threshold. Feel the ground beneath your feet at this exact boundary, the place where the territory behind you meets the territory ahead of you. Notice that the ground at this threshold is different from the ground on either side of it. It is steady in a way that the ground behind you often was not. It is solid in a way that feels almost unfamiliar after so many seasons of uncertain footing. And notice that your body knows something your mind is still catching up to. Your body knows that this is not the beginning of another hard crossing. This is the beginning of a different kind of movement entirely. Now look up. Not ahead yet, just up, and let yourself feel, without trying to name it or analyze it or make it fit into the framework of everything you have already experienced. The specific quality of the air at this threshold. There is something in it that your frequency recognizes even before your mind has processed it. It is the air of arrival. Not the arrival of a destination that ends the journey, but the arrival of the season where the Pathfinder's gifts are no longer spent on survival, but on creation, on building, on marking the road for the ones who are coming, on being seen and known, and positioned in the rooms that were being arranged for you during every season when you felt most invisible. Now look forward, and I want you to notice something very specific about the territory ahead of you. It is not empty, it is prepared. The Kairos moment does not open onto blank, resistant ground. It opens onto ground that has been in preparation during every Chronos season that felt wasted, ground that has been arranged by the same hand that guided you through the midnight hours. Ground that is already structured around the shape of the gifts you carry and the frequency you were born with and the road you paid such a high price to build. The Pathfinder does not arrive at prepared ground by accident. The Pathfinder arrives there because the preparation of the ground and the preparation of the person were always happenings simultaneously in two different registers of time. Chronos and Kairos moving in parallel until the moment they converge at the threshold where you are standing right now. And I want you to do one more thing before we step forward from this moment. I want you to make a decision, not a loud decision, not a performative declaration, but a quiet, internal, irreversible decision to carry your identity as a Pathfinder forward from this threshold with intention. To stop apologizing for the sensitivity that was your instrument. To stop diminishing the road you built by describing your past only in terms of what it cost rather than what it created. To stop waiting for external confirmation of something that heaven confirmed in the Kairos record before you were born. You are a Pathfinder. You came first. You walked the unmapped ground. You paid the cost of the road. And now the season of walking that road in fullness, of moving across prepared ground with the clarity and the creativity and the restored frequency of the chosen one has arrived. Let me speak a few quiet, personal blessings over you before we move forward, because a Pathfinder who stands at a threshold deserves to be sent forward with more than information. May the clarity that has been returning to your mind continue to sharpen until every decision you need to make in this new season arrives with a cleanness and a confidence you have not felt in years. May the relationships that are drawing closer to you in this repositioning season carry exactly the quality of companionship and mutual recognition that the long isolation made you most hungry for. May the voice that is returning to you find rooms that are ready for it, rooms where what you carry is not too much, but exactly enough. May the road you built through the midnight seasons become a blessing to every soul who follows it, and may you live long enough to see at least some of their faces, and may the frequency you were born with, the one that was dimmed by the weight of the waiting, and is now coming back online, rise to its full strength in this Kairos season and carry you into everything that the appointed time has been holding in reserve for exactly the person you have become. You are a pathfinder. The threshold is behind you now. The prepared ground is ahead. And what I want to show you next is exactly what that ground looks like in the three most practical areas of your everyday life. Because the pathfinder does not only move in the spiritual register. The pathfinder moves in the real, tangible, everyday world where relationships and purpose and resources intersect. And that is precisely where we are going next. The prepared ground ahead of you is not an abstract promise. It is not a spiritual concept that lives only in the register of vision and faith and the language of thresholds and frequencies. It is real, and it is practical, and it is already beginning to take shape in the three most concrete areas of your everyday life. The pathfinder who has just crossed the threshold does not float into the next season in a state of perpetual spiritual elevation. The pathfinder walks into specific rooms, specific relationships, specific opportunities, and specific resource streams that have been arranged for exactly who they have become. And I want to walk you through each of those three areas with enough specificity that you can recognize them when they arrive. Because recognition is the pathfinder's gift, and this season requires you to use it. The first area is relationships, and what is about to happen here is something that will feel both disorienting and deeply right at the same time. You have already begun to feel the repositioning that I described earlier. The quiet withdrawal of certain connections and the gentle approach of new ones. But I want to give you a more complete picture of what that repositioning actually looks like as it unfolds in the practical landscape of your daily life. The people who are leaving are not leaving because of failure, yours or theirs. They are leaving because the frequency of the season you are entering is genuinely incompatible with the frequency they currently carry. And trying to hold those connections in place through the transition would require you to shrink back into a version of yourself that no longer fits the threshold you have just crossed. Let them go with gratitude because they carried you through seasons that required exactly what they had to offer. And the release of them is not a betrayal of what was shared. It is the honest acknowledgement that seasons change, and that love sometimes looks like allowing people to move into the spaces where their own frequency belongs. And the people who are coming, listen carefully to this, because the Pathfinder's sensitivity is going to help you recognize them in ways you might not expect. They will not always arrive with fanfare or obvious significance. They will often appear in the margins of ordinary moments, a conversation that goes longer than expected, a connection that forms without effort in a context you did not anticipate, a person whose presence produces an unusual quality of ease and recognition, as though you have known each other through something longer than the current moment. These are the people Heaven has been positioning for this exact chapter of your story, the collaborators and the companions, and the community of chosen ones that the Pathfinder's Road was always meant to connect you with. Do not overlook them because they arrived quietly. Do not dismiss the recognition because it feels almost too immediate to be trustworthy. The Pathfinder's instinct for reading terrain extends to people. And in this season, that instinct has been calibrated by everything the midnight hours taught you about what is real and what is not. There is also something specific I want to say about the quality of connection you are about to experience that will be unlike what the long season made available to you. In the midnight hours, the relationships you carried were often marked by a particular kind of asymmetry. You giving more than you received, You seeing more in others than they were able to see in you. You holding space for people who did not yet have the capacity to hold space in return. That asymmetry was not a mistake, and it was not a sign that you were destined for one-sided connections. It was the relational cost of being the pathfinder moving through unmapped territory where mutuality had not yet been established. But the prepared ground ahead of you carries a different relational structure entirely, one built on genuine recognition and mutual frequency, where what you carry is met with something of equal weight and depth. That kind of connection is coming, and when it arrives, you will recognize it by the absence of the performing and the shrinking, and the careful management of how much of yourself you allow to be visible. The second area is purpose, and what is shifting here is something so practical it might surprise you after everything we have spoken about in the register of Kairos and midnight hours in ancient language. The question that has been circling you for years, the question of what you are specifically supposed to be doing, the question that felt unanswerable during the long season, not because you lacked vision, but because the pieces were not yet assembled in a configuration that could be clearly read. That question's about to answer itself in the form of one clear, small, entirely actionable step, not a grand revelation, not a complete blueprint delivered all at once. One step, specific, concrete, available, and unmistakably yours. The Pathfinder does not receive the full map of the territory all at once, because the full map would be overwhelming to a person who is just crossing the threshold, and because the nature of pathfinding is that the road reveals itself in the walking of it, rather than in the studying of it from a distance. What you are going to receive in this season is the first step of the road that your gifts were designed to build, and that step is going to be smaller and more accessible than the size of your calling has led you to expect. Do not dismiss it because of its apparent smallness. The Pathfinder's road always begins with a single clear step taken in full commitment, and that commitment is what opens the next step, and the next, and the one after that. The question of what you are supposed to do is not going to be answered by a vision large enough to contain your entire destiny. It is going to be answered by a nudge, specific enough to move your feet today. I also want to address the fear that has attached itself to the question of purpose during the long season. The fear that if you commit to the wrong thing, you will waste more of the Chronos time that already feels insufficient. That fear is understandable, and it has served a protective function during the midnight hours. But it has also been one of the primary things keeping you standing at the edge of the threshold, rather than stepping through it. The Pathfinder's sensitivity was not given to you, so that you could analyze every possible step until perfect certainty arrived. It was given to you so that you could read the terrain in real time and adjust as you walk. You are not going to miss your purpose by taking the clear small step that is in front of you. You are only going to miss it by standing still, that the Kairos moment does not require of you. The third area is resources and opportunities, and this is the area where I want to be most specific and most careful, because the Pathfinder who has come through the midnight season often carries a deeply conditioned reflex around lack, a reflex that developed for entirely understandable reasons during years when resources were genuinely constrained and opportunities seemed to open for everyone except for them. That reflex told you to grip tightly, to ration carefully, to distrust abundance, when it appeared because experience had taught you that what looked like open doors often led to rooms that were not yet ready for you. And that reflex protected you during the season when it was accurate. But it is no longer accurate. and carrying it into the prepared ground ahead of you will cause you to walk past the very resources and opportunities that have been arranged for this chapter of your life. What is coming in this area does not look like fighting for your portion. It does not look like the exhausting, strategic, anxiety-driven pursuit of resources that the midnight season required. What is coming looks like alignment, like the experience of being in the right place at the right time, not because you engineered it through superior effort, but because the Kairos repositioning has placed you at the intersection where what you carry and what the moment requires meet each other cleanly. Opportunities are going to arrive through channels you did not cultivate and from directions you were not monitoring, because the pathfinder who moves through prepared ground does not have to pursue what belongs to them. What belongs to them has been in preparation for their arrival, and it recognizes the frequency of the one it was built for when that person finally steps into the room. You are not going to have to fight for what is yours in this season. You are not going to have to perform for it or reduce yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for the full version of who you are. The resources and the opportunities that are moving toward you now are moving toward the pathfinder who crossed the threshold, the one who carried the full weight of the midnight season and came through it with the frequency intact. And they are calibrated to the size of what you carry, rather than the size of what the long season made visible. Receive them without apology. Step into them without shrinking. They were prepared for you before you knew this threshold existed, and the only thing left now is to walk through the door of this new season with the full confidence of the Pathfinder, who finally understands what the road was for. I want to take a moment before we go any further to simply acknowledge that you are still here. You have traveled the full length of this message, through the warning and the rescue, through the science and the ancient language, through the naming of what the season cost you, and the vision of what the prepared ground holds for you, and the fact that you are still present, still listening, still receiving, tells me something about you that I want to say out loud. You are not someone who gives up when the territory is difficult. You never were. And the Pathfinder who crossed the threshold a short while ago in that quiet visualization is not a future version of you that you are still working toward. That is who you already are, right now, in this moment, after everything. I want to thank you, not in a formal or performative way, but in the way that one chosen one thanks another for showing up when showing up was costly, because it was costly for you to be here tonight. It cost you the comfort of staying asleep. It cost you the protection of not hoping again after so many seasons of hoping at great personal expense. It cost you the willingness to sit with the grief of what the waiting took before you were ready to receive the language of what was being built. That kind of courage does not announce itself. It simply shows up, quietly and without fanfare, the way you showed up tonight. And I do not want to move past it without honoring it fully. All across the world right now, other chosen ones are walking into this exact same message. They are sitting in cars parked in driveways because they cannot bring themselves to go inside yet. They are lying awake at 3 in the morning with their phones held above their faces in the dark. They are sitting at kitchen tables in the early hours before anyone else in the house has stirred, holding a cup of something warm and feeling the particular loneliness of the one who sees more than they can explain to the people around them. And every single one of them is carrying what you have been carrying, moving through what you have been moving through, arriving at the same recognition that you arrived at tonight. You were not alone in this. You were never alone in this. And the road you built through your midnight season is the same road that is carrying them toward their own threshold. I want to give you one final practice before we close, because the pathfinder who steps through the threshold does not carry the full weight of the territory behind them into the prepared ground ahead. What you have been carrying, the accumulated heaviness of the long season, the grief of what was lost, the exhaustion of the midnight hours, the scar tissue of the relationships that did not hold and the doors that did not open, and the dreams that went quiet in public while burning in private. All of that deserves to be set down at the threshold before you take your first full steps into the new ground. So, I want you to picture the threshold again, the one you stood at during the visualization in part 7. And this time, I want you to see yourself reaching into the space where you have been carrying all of that weight. Not in your hands, but somewhere deeper, in the place in your chest where the long season lived. And I want you to begin to lift it out of yourself gently and without force, the way you would lift something fragile and heavy at the same time. The grief of the relationships that could have been. The ache of the career that moved more slowly than your capacity deserved. The weariness of the years you spent holding a dream too large for the rooms you were confined to. The erosion of the self-trust that the repeated seasons of invisible labor produced. Lift all of it and see yourself placing it at the threshold, not throwing it away, not pretending it was not real, but setting it down with intention, with the full acknowledgement that it was real, and it was costly, and it shaped you into the pathfinder who now stands on the other side of it. And then straighten. Feel what your body feels like without that weight in the place it has been living for so long. Let the straightening be real and physical, not just imagined, because the pathfinder who moves into the prepared ground ahead moves upright, moves with the full height of who they are, carries themselves with the quiet confidence of someone who knows what road they built and what it cost and what it was for. You are allowed to walk upright into what is coming. You are not only allowed, you are designed for it. Something real was built here today, in the space between my voice and your heart, and it belongs to both of us now. What passed between us in this message was not simply information delivered and received. It was a recognition, a naming, a confirmation of something that was already true about you before this message began. Something that the long season covered over and that tonight helped uncover again. And that uncovering is yours to keep. No returning season of difficulty can take it back, because you have heard your own name spoken now, and the pathfinder who has been named does not forget what they are called. If this message has meant something real to you today, I want you to know that pressing like is simply your way of saying so without needing words, a quiet signal that something true arrived and that you received it. And if you leave some in the comments, even a single word, or a simple acknowledgement that you were here, you ensure that the next chosen one who finds this message does not have to feel like they arrived alone. Because your presence in the comment thread is the evidence that someone else sat in this same space and was met and was named and kept going. Share this with one person, just one. Someone you know is still in the thick of their midnight hour and who needs to hear that the appointed time cannot be canceled and that what God has ordained, delay cannot cancel. That single act of sharing is perhaps the most direct expression of the Pathfinder's identity, creating a road for someone else to walk by, doing nothing more than pointing to the one you just traveled. And if you feel that something of value has been built in you through this community, and you want to remain part of what is being built here, subscribing is simply your way of choosing to stay at the table, of saying that this is a community of chosen ones you want to keep waking up alongside. If you feel moved to pass something forward to the next soul who finds their way here, there is a link in the pinned comment where you can offer what you can, with no pressure and no expectation. Simply, the quiet generosity of a pathfinder who knows that the road they built was built for others to walk. And if the genius wave met you somewhere in the middle of this message, if the naming of the dimmed frequency and the science of what the long season suppressed landed in you with the weight of recognition rather than the lightness of information, then you already know whether it is a yes for you. There is no pressure in this final mention, only the honest acknowledgement that the tool is there, in the pinned comment below, waiting with the same quiet availability that everything heaven prepares, carries, present without demanding, open without expiring, ready for the moment when the chosen one is ready to receive it. If it is a yes, the link is there. If the timing is not yet right, that is also honored. The Pathfinder moves when the terrain confirms the step, and only you can feel when that confirmation has arrived. You have done something tonight that many people are not yet willing to do. You sat with the grief of what the season cost. You received the ancient language of Kairos and the midnight hour. You stood at the threshold and looked back at the road you built, and forward at the prepared ground ahead. You set down the weight at the threshold and straightened into the full height of who you are, and you received your name, Pathfinder. That name is yours now. Carry it into everything that comes next. You came here tonight carrying something heavy, and you are leaving lighter than you arrived. That is not a small thing. That is the work of a heaven-appointed hour, doing exactly what it was sent to do. And I want you to feel the full weight of that truth as you prepare to step back into your everyday life. Because the everyday life you are stepping back into is not the same one you left when this message began. Something has changed in the interior architecture of who you are, quietly and without announcement. The way dawn changes the quality of the air before the light becomes visible. You are a pathfinder. You crossed unmapped ground to get here. You built a road through territory that had no markers and no guarantee of safe arrival. And that road is real, and it is yours, and it will carry the weight of every soul who follows you through it without ever knowing your name. Let that be enough for this moment. Let the knowledge that your endurance was never wasted, that every midnight hour was threading itself into a testimony that someone else will one day need more than they. Need air. Let that settle into the place in you that has been asking for a long time whether any of it mattered. It mattered. All of it mattered. Every single step you took across the unmapped ground was being recorded in a register that Chronos cannot measure and that opposition cannot erase. The window that heaven opened over your life is still open. The Kairos moment that brought you to this threshold has not passed, and the prepared ground ahead of you is exactly as real as the road behind you, which means it is more real than anything the midnight season tried to convince you to settle for. Walk into it upright. Walk into it with the full height of the Pathfinder who has been named and seen and sent forward. Walk into it knowing that the frequency you carry is returning to its full strength, that the clarity and the creativity and the deep knowing that the long season suppressed are coming back online, and that the 7 minutes you gave yourself tonight were not a small gesture, but the beginning of a restoration that will continue to deepen every time you return to that stillness. I want to leave you with a blessing that I mean with everything I have. May every door that opens in this new season open to the full width of what you carry, not the reduced width of what the waiting season convinced you to expect. May the people who are drawing near to you arrive with the quality of recognition and mutuality that the long isolation made you most hungry for. May your voice find rooms that are ready for it. Rooms where the frequency you carry is not too much, but exactly right. May the road you built through midnight season become a blessing that outlives you and reaches further than you could ever personally travel. And may you wake tomorrow morning with the quiet, unshakable knowing of the Pathfinder who has crossed the threshold and who understands finally and fully that they were never delayed. They were always, in every season, being assembled for this. Go gently, chosen one. The prepared ground is beneath your feet, the window is open, and heaven has known your name since before the waiting began.